LinkedIn connections are where most of my best stories have come from.
Hello and welcome everyone to Media Coffee, a PR Newswire series where we interview journalists and editors from leading media organizations around the world. Our goal is to help PR professionals and communication teams better understand how to engage effectively with the media. Journalists covering sustainability are instrumental in shaping the narrative around climate action, ESG commitments, and responsible business. So, understanding how to work with them effectively is vital for any company, small or big, aiming to tell its story. This is why we're having this conversation with Stephen Downs, Group Content Director at BizClik Media and Editor in Chief of Sustainability Magazine. Stephen brings deep insight into content strategy, editorial leadership, and stakeholder engagement. As always, if you'd like to know more about PR Newswire, a Cision brand, please visit our website, drop us an email, or connect with us on social media. And don't forget to send us your questions. We would love to include them in future episodes. Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. So, just to start, can you please give us like a brief introduction about yourself and experiences?
Yes, of course. I've been in the world of journalism for 33 years now, actually. For most of that time, I was working for a regional print daily newspaper. But the last couple of years, I've been working at BizClik Media, which is largely focused on digital magazines, including sustainability, energy, technology, DC. So I think we've got a suite of about 12, and I run the content team for those digital magazines, and we also do events like Sustainability Live. So the last couple of years, I've been taking the lead in that.
Were you always interested in sustainability, or is that something you stumbled upon and then continued on working on?
I have to be completely honest, I needed a job. And
Fair enough.
uh, yeah, so it was a couple of years ago, I needed a job, and a friend of mine worked here. The job came up, and they said, "Do you want to be editor of Sustainability Magazine?" And I thought I better look up a bit more detail on what that means. And it took me maybe 2 weeks to be completely into it, to just think, wow, this is such an interesting subject. It affects every aspect of everybody's life. Every business in the world wants to talk about it. And it's actually been so far, and I'm sure going into the future, the most satisfying 2 years of my working life.
Sustainability has been around for a long time. Lots of people talk about it, lots of companies, etc. So, from your experience as a journalist, what makes a sustainability story newsworthy?
Well, there's a number of things with it, really. They're on a purely journalistic level, because that's what I am ultimately. I'm looking for something that just catches my attention. I'm looking for the hook, which might be a particular brand that a business is talking about. It might be the business itself, something like Pepsi Cola or Kellogg's, something instantly recognizable out there. Or it might be a smaller company that's doing something so extraordinary, like Carbfix over in Iceland, where they're taking CO2 and burying it and turning it into stone in 2 years. And so it's all across the range. But to me, it has to be something that makes me sit up and take notice. It's got to be something eye-catching, ear-catching, and ultimately it's about then making sure that the audience get that story in the right way.
When we talk about eye-catching, that I think these kind of terminologies might confuse PR professionals or comms professionals as well a little bit. So when you say eye-catching, are you talking about, and I'm assuming it's probably elements of both, but are we talking about a story itself, like what is it about, or are we talking about like the creative writing of the press release?
I think I would say that it's probably about three-quarters the former, three-quarters the actual content and the hook, the the piece of tech or the person. There is, of course, an element of presentation that comes to it, if you get a really grey press release which doesn't have images, doesn't have links to anything additional, it's harder to get excited about it because you can't visualize it. So I do think that the main part of it is, the center of the story, the hook that makes you want to write about it. But additional to that, there is the adornment to it that makes that press release more interesting. The way the intro to that press release is written in a way that invites you in. I think, in a sense, for me, the press releases kind of need to be written a bit like news stories. You need to you need to lure the reader in with a couple of paragraphs at the start that make you really interested. But that's my approach.
And what do you think PR professionals should keep in mind while they're writing this kind of press releases to sustainability journalists?
That's quite a difficult one. I mean, I've never worked on that side. Obviously, I've never worked in PR, but I've always maintained good relationships with people in PR. And I think one thing to have in mind is the audience of the business that you are sending your press release to, and to understand to a degree who you're targeting and therefore who that publishing company is targeting. Because we, for example, write for sustainability leaders. We don't, our content isn't really for a broader sustainability public audience. It's much more about people who work in sustainability. So if I were looking at writing a release that I was going to send to me, I'd be looking to make it more professionally focused in that respect, and less consumer focused and more about, trying to attract those thought leaders and those leaders in the industry.
I remember when I started, I did work in PR a little bit, and I remember when I started a few years ago, um, all the conversation revolved around ESG, and everyone was talking about it, ESG goals, etc. And then it shifted a little bit to more specific topics, like, let's say, clean tech, for example. What are the major trends that you're seeing right now within the sustainability industry?
There's quite a few. It's an incredibly active area, sometimes in disappointing ways, because the companies pull back, then others push forward. So we're seeing quite a few. I'm finding across energy and sustainability there's various things. Energy security is huge right now, and I think the conflict in Ukraine was something that really made people think deeply about energy security. And we're seeing so many more businesses trying to secure their energy through their own means or through their own countries or extended networks, rather than from places where, in the dropping of one bomb or the cutting off of one canal could destroy your supply chain. So energy security is huge. I think we're also seeing a big change in trend from just recording sustainability and making it all about reports, and where there's more ability to greenwash in a sense, and the understanding now that sustainability is a driver for successful business. And I think more and more businesses are understanding that. And that's the message that I think sustainability leaders are getting across now, is that actually, if we become a more sustainable business, we become a more profitable business. We become a more long-term secure business, because we protect ourselves against the climate change and conflict and other things like that. So maybe mention just one more thing, and I think this is probably the biggest, and that's artificial intelligence. And it's interesting to know which way that's going to go, because obviously AI is an enormous user of energy, but it is also an incredibly quick learner that could have the key to helping us to decarbonize. So how businesses integrate AI into their systems and how quickly, I think, will arguably be the biggest um, influence on how quickly we get to net zero.
Yeah, just mentioning how companies are now more aware that of the importance of discussing sustainability, also communicating their sustainability plans, etc. I guess my question would be, what is the best way to communicate effectively? Um, Sorry, just to rephrase it. What is the best way for these companies to communicate effectively about their work around sustainability in an authentic way and not basically be perceived as greenwashing?
Yeah, it's very difficult to be certain on it because companies are very good at what they do in that respect because big companies have very effective communications teams and they're very good at getting the good messages out there. I truly believe that excuse me, I truly believe that honesty and transparency are critically important in this. I'm very happy to sit down with a chief sustainability officer from a big company and for them to say, we're not doing as well as we should be doing, but this is what we're doing. Because that gives me the ability to understand that they are being honest with me. And my job and the job of my team is we have a very clear policy that we try to write the positive stories about sustainability of bigger companies in the world. Other people will probably focus on greenwashing and things, but we feel that from our perspective, it's about giving companies encouragement to continue to do those small incremental things that become bigger things that actually become change makers. So I think all I really ask of companies is that they're honest. You know, the moment we feel that a company is trying to hide something by putting out something else, the trust breaks down, and you write happy stories about other companies. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there like any red flags you might pay attention to that might suggest greenwashing when you're reading a press release?
I'm not so sure about when I'm reading a press release, but just in general, I'm always concerned if a very big company puts out a press release about something really small that they've done in towards sustainability, like providing paper cups at an event or something like that, and
Mm.
celebrate it in such an over-the-top big way with images and stuff. It makes me suspicious. I'm naturally suspicious as a journalist. And I think, well, why are you doing this? And often these things are put out round about the same time as people's annual sustainability reports are put out. And then you kind of think, okay, so I'm going to have to delve deep into that sustainability report. I don't mind people putting out small incremental things, but I think that sometimes they are a smokescreen.
So would you prefer for getting these kind of reports or like the press releases or actually having that conversation? I think you touched on it a little bit, but is it better for companies to actually have in-person meeting with the journalists or like a phone conversation with the journalists explaining what they're doing, their plans, etc., or just depend a lot on these reports that they publish once or twice per year?
It kind of depends. I do think there's nothing to beat having a face-to-face meeting and a chat and understanding each other. I mean, what we like to do is we like to actually ultimately to speak to the senior executives and, not bypass communications, but, you know, use them to help us to get to the executives because we want the executives to tell the story on behalf of the company rather than a press release. We'll do stuff from press releases, but ultimately it's about when you put the face to the company, I think it really helps. You've got the chief sustainability officer of Coca-Cola and they're talking. The authority is different to just having a press release and writing it up. Um, and I would say that where possible, it would be good if communications people were a bit more ready and able to give access to the senior executives and to trust us at this end to tell their stories. And in fairness, over a period of years, we've built that trust with many companies and we do have that access. So I think it's a model that works as long as we don't let people down at our end.
In terms of companies that had previous legal issues or past issues related to sustainability or environmental crisis or negative environmental record, let's put it that way. Um, in your opinion, what is the best way? What would you advise them to overcome that past, basically, and let's say open a new page?
I think it's really important that they don't try and hide from it and bury their head in the sand. I mean, I would never name a company in this conversation, but we've had an example recently with a company that has got a very notorious past of damage to the environment and greenwashing. And we tried to work with them. And when we wrote something, they then tried to effectively greenwash what we'd written by making us change the message about their company and to take out the things about the past. And I don't understand that as a model. It to me is just unwise because the moment you get the media offside, you're losing your audience. So I would say any company with whatever their past is, if they want to improve and they want to get a message out that they are working harder for sustainability, I think you just got to be upfront. The conversation has to start with, you know what, we've made mistakes. We've we've not been great for the planet in the past, and we're not perfect, but we want to improve. We want to work with you. We want to do this, this, and this. We're showing you what we're going to do to improve it. And I think that's a good story as much as any story, because if you find it's a bit like redemption, I suppose. You know, someone who's been bad in the past can be good in the future. We don't have to cross off the companies, but if they're going to continue to try and dodge and weave, then they're never gonna they're never gonna own the message.
In terms of the industry in general, are there any recent policy changes or regulatory development that companies should be aware of?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so many, so many. I'm not even going to try and list acronyms right now because that's not one of my strengths. But right now, across the world, every area seems to be reviewing its ESG rules. That acronym itself, I think, seems to be dying out a bit, but its sustainability laws, its rules on circularity. There's so much up the CCSRG, I think it is, and EU Green Claims Directive, and there's just so much going on over in America. They're changing the laws. California itself is tightening up its own laws. So it's actually, I think, going to be really tricky for all businesses, particularly global businesses, because if you're operating across every continent, you're going to have different rules to apply to adhere to in every area. But there is so much, and I'm not even sure that we're going to get our heads around it until it settles down in a couple of years, because the EU has been going through massive changes recently, where it was going to bring in new legislation, and now it seems to be, the shorthand way of saying it is watering it down. I don't know if it's watering it down and making it more realistic, but everywhere we go, it's changing. But I think whatever is changing, I think there is still a momentum that won't be stopped for moving towards more sustainability. Some people get quite down about it. I don't get down about it. I just think that as the younger generations come up, they're different to the older generations, and the momentum will force people to behave differently.
Well, since you're working with global companies, and you don't have to mention a name, of course, but I'm interested to know if you came across a company or if you can give an example of a company that successfully managed to position itself as a leader within the sustainability industry by communications.
Yeah, I mean, in this area, I'm very happy to name the companies because it's nice and positive, isn't it? Um, I can think of two. I mean, I could think of loads, but two that stand out. So one is Schneider Electric. Now, I hadn't heard of Schneider Electric before I started working here. I didn't have any reason to. I wasn't going to get products from them or electricity from them. But first of all, they're doing incredible things in the sustainability area. But secondly, they are really good at communicating it in a balanced, non-boastful way. There are things that they do that I think are a good model for all businesses. Their branding is really good in terms of making sure that when they put out releases and they put out anything about themselves, they've got things on their branding that include, 2025 named number one in the Time, whatever list of sustainable companies. They get themselves out there for events as keynote speakers, as hosts for fireside chats. They sponsor events. So they're in the midst of the places where the influences are and the big companies are and the thought leaders are, and they are in people's mind. They're also incredibly effective on LinkedIn. I think that's important in the business world. They're very good at how they use LinkedIn. Put themselves forward for a lot of awards, I think, because awards are always good things to have on your CV.
Yeah.
And I particularly like the way that they celebrate the success of others. I always feel that they're happy to stand to the side and push someone else to the front, a smaller business, and say, we're so proud of what they've done. So Schneider Electric is one. The other, and all of those examples work the same, is a company called HH Global. They're a fair bit smaller business than Schneider, but they punch above their weight in that respect. They've got really approachable people. They've got really lively people who do all of the other things that Schneider do. And I think the common thread with those two companies and other companies that have success in that area is that accessibility to the executives. So the executives are approachable and the PR communications teams are happy to connect you direct with the executives and not to control the message too much.
Thank you for sharing this too. I guess last just couple of questions. You did mention that obviously BizClik Media, you do have a lot of different titles, but you also have events that sort of related to sustainability. I'm interested to know, are there like any major events that companies need to be aware of and also try and attend these events? Or do you think the smaller events will work better, or it doesn't matter in general?
I think it's good for companies to attend events. I mean, obviously, I'd say it's great for companies to attend our events. I'm bound to say it. We have Sustainability Live in London in September, Sustainability Live Net Zero next March, and we also have we're going to Climate Week New York in end of September, and we have a Chicago event every May. So, and they're successful events. We have lots of incredible people there. In terms of other events, I don't tend to attend the other events myself because I'm so busy with doing our own.
Yeah.
But there are plenty out there. And I think sometimes it's actually really good to attend events that are set up by the individual companies
Hmm.
because the bigger companies, when they do their own sustainability events, they're like magnetically draw other companies to them. But yeah, It ought to be an area I know more about, but because we are doing our own events, we don't tend to be out there covering many others.
Yeah, absolutely. Got it. And then again, because you have a lot of different titles, in terms of just companies reaching out to journalists in organizations similar to yours, um, how or what is the best way to communicate with you? Is it through email, phone call, or actually attending these events to meet you in person?
I think the best two ways to start with are email and LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn's a really good way to start that communication. Emails can get a bit lost. You get so many every day, I'm sure you do too. LinkedIn connections are where most of my best stories have come from. And then attending our events, definitely. I mean, because then meeting someone in person, having a coffee with them, talking about next steps, to just getting to know people makes such a difference because then what happens is if you're then thinking, I need to do a story about this particular thing, you think, I spoke to her or to him or at this event and they're in your mind rather than they're not, rather than just being an email address. It's that personal thing. I just think the personal touch is critically important.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me to actually listen to journalists answer this question because it differs from, organization to another and from country to another as well. I had people, I think, in Spain, Italy, and Middle East and Kenya as well, in Africa, they were more open to receiving communication through WhatsApp after obviously establishing the first connection with the journalist. That was like quite interesting to know. And now you've mentioned LinkedIn as well. So yeah, it's really great to have journalists answer this question.